Is not going to be on binary methodologies for recording things, gray code, or anything of the sort at all, because that's all computer-based, and these are marks on trees, rocks, etc. If you're attempting to make a symbolic writing of any kind, the easiest way to do it that would last the longest is to make non-ambiguous symbols. But how do you make a non-ambiguous symbol for the sound of or d or t or k? Now, if you're not aware of this, this is called Ogham, which is, the word means many, many things. If you look it up, when you look it up, you're going to find various things. But we're referring to a type of writing script. No, I do not know anything about the subject. I'm taking this from the perspective of unambiguous, high signal to noise ratio, high quality way of communicating things within a group that is unambiguous and basically hard to screw up. Now, if you're not aware of sight counting, this is where you look at a bunch of individual things that are identical, like marbles, grapes, sticks, whatever. You find out human beings can intrinsically sight count without practice up to 4 or 5 items, a lot like 4 fingers on your hand and 1 thumb, or all 5 digits, or not. Depending on the culture, group, individual, whatever, you're going to find variation of this. Now, what am I bringing up here and why? Inspired by a YouTube channel that ostensibly I've had an argument with, but I finally get this person, so I'm going to be delving into a lack of comfort area here. This form of writing was done in the way you're seeing to force it to be unambiguously recording some statement. There are gravestones with kind of markings on it. And I understand from what little I need to look up that there's more than one version of this. And very importantly, that is literally going to be the way everything is. If you look up any writing system, you're going to find variations. In the English language, there has never been really a standardized spelling system, and it doesn't make sense internally, the English language especially. Some languages are very good at making sure the phonetics work exactly the same way, so it's really easy to learn them once you learn some of them. And yes, I understand these symbols have names next to them, but I've seen variation of this, so I'm not going to care. It's not relevant at this point. Let's move on. And it also doesn't even matter what sounds they're supposed to represent, because it's arbitrary. Or is it? The fastest symbol to write, in this case, is H. Then there's B, A, and M. Are those the most common letters used in the English language? No. But in Gaelic, it may be. Then it's D, L, O, and G. Now, you may have noticed I'm saying them in a certain order. The orientation of this would totally change its meaning from this to this, which means the most likely error you would make if you were to see this on an object that could be rotated would be that you would get them in the wrong order. Then you'd have to verbally, phonetically pronounce the word, and if you knew what language it's doing, and you could say, oh, okay, it's upside down. Just like looking at a book. Or reading a sentence. Some languages do right to left or left to right. Some do top to bottom or bottom to top. They really do. And any combination thereof. Some things work unambiguously from center outward to prevent that of whatever line you're looking at. This may be a single word, or there may be an implied space or some other symbol for breaks. I didn't include all of them here, obviously. There are more symbols. But the basic level is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 combinations. You could easily sign language this by doing left hand on the left, doing these symbols for right hand usage, or flipping the hand around. This one can be done by putting both hands together, and this one can be done doing the same symbols by tilting them. If you're not aware of it, in many, many societies, sign language started before speech. There's some evidence for this, and, well, I take it as axiomatic that that's at least something that happened, at least in some societies. Now, I have no expertise in this, but I do have an expertise in signal-to-noise ratio and difficulty with ambiguity of symbol. This one can be oriented upside down and still look about the same. Well, only if you rotate it. If you flip this up and down by mirroring it, you would know that it was backwards, but that probably wouldn't happen. It's from upper left to right because the majority of people are right-handed. This one's left to right or right to left, it doesn't matter, but these have the orientation that are important. These deorientatable patterns it's kind of a central conceit that you have to have that happen. So, what do I have to contribute to this if you were looking up this? Number one, this isn't all of the symbols. Number two, this should never be considered, an expert's opinion. This is me looking at it the same way I would look at the way you might record information on film. Audio data on film is done by making it pass more or less light through a thin slit from light behind the film, going through what looks like a wave shape that actually matches the voice bit or sound you're hearing, and does a decent job of reproducing it on old film. On CDs, it's done by changing how often there's a transition from dark to light, effectively, on the CD-ROM's track for audio. There's hundreds of examples of this. Communication through RS-232 is done by how much current is flowing through and maintaining a connection. Asynchronous versus synchronous. There's 100 billion problems you have to solve when you're trying to communicate over distance and especially time. And this methodology here looks almost like a technician or a geek or a hacker were trying to make it absolutely impossible for having any ambiguity. Seeing how this would be chiseled into stone or into sometimes trees as a message to someone in the future. The persons who came up with this came up with a system to communicate something. And again, all of these, in my opinion, should be treated as purely arbitrary. You could assign them any way you want to and make some logic of it. The most common reason characters like this, where they use a certain number of duplicated symbols, a simple line. This is very similar to barcode, to the untrained eye, obviously, and also to the trained eye. But the idea here is, what would be least ambiguous? I would come up with a method for having these bars have cut lengths. There is another version of this, not this particular symbol system, where they really do long and short lines. But that might look like somebody smudged out a line or filled in a spot, or a tree healed from having the scratches in it. But on stone it would work very well. The reason I'm bringing this up is I've seen literally, I think at this point, thousands of different ways of communicating verbal statements or symbology over the years, and my favorites are always just like this, where they use the same thing repeatedly and in slightly different orientations or patterns for doing this. Many of you might have done this in grade school or high school, where you come up with symbols where you draw a line, and then draw an X, and then draw a multiply sign, and then have another variation where you do all the other possible examples of very simple line drawings that would be really trivial to get good at, to where you could make it unambiguous and very clear. This is an example of a structured language being written down that looks as if it was attempting to be very, very hard to get wrong. And I applaud this. Now, why am I doing this? Part of this is penance because I insulted somebody over the last few weeks or months, possibly, good Lord, for bringing in a subject that I do believe and still believe has nothing to do with the subject matter of the video that I was doing. And that was a comment they left. But the fact that they're into this kind of subject matter and are willing to try to share should be applauded. So this is my extremely baby steps version of me acknowledging by saying this. This is one of many varieties of the same thing as a person who deals with loss of data throughout history as an archival geek. This is an example of someone trying to do it right. Unambiguous communication over time using admittedly and acknowledgedly arbitrary symbols that are really hard to, destroy. Many of these rune symbols or Ogham or line art or whatever you want to call it have survived for possibly hundreds or thousands of years, depending on where they were done, until they were ultimately destroyed by the elements themselves or time. No way to stop time, I suppose. How long do you think your iPhone is going to last holding your deepest secrets or best photos? And now we get to the archival argument for the day. Print out everything you care about and learn to erase everything you don't. If you care about it enough, you might want to frame it. Someone in the past found a way to make it to where they didn't have to frame it. They just had to find something that was a challenge to put their symbols into so that it'd be a challenge to destroy. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with